cheese. Recorded live.
Hello, America, and hello, nuclear aficionados around the world. Welcome to Nuclear.com Daily. This is Friday, December 27th, 2013. I'm Steve Schulin of Nuclear.com, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of your day. Those of you listening in later via podcast or haven't watched the YouTube video, please know that you are welcome, wanted, and encouraged to come join in live every Monday through Friday, starting at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join in just like a conference call. The number is 724-444-7444. You'll be asked for a call ID. That's 95348#. Come one, come all of goodwill to Nuclear.com Daily. Let us reason together. Well, before we get into the front pages, let's take a look at the Nuclear Energy Institute's daily email. Their top story, NRC study favorable toward proposed Lee nuclear plant in South Carolina. That's the William States Lee III nuclear station, a 2-unit plan. Duke Energy's proposed Lee nuclear plant in South Carolina has passed an environmental review conducted by the NRC, which recommended the issuance of a construction and operating license. The company has not decided whether to proceed with the project. And I think last week I posted the link to part 1 of that environmental report that was released by NRC. Anyway, today NEI has a link to the Charlotte Observer's website on this story. Next, Fort Calhoun story from the Associated Press. Nebraska nuclear plant resumes operation. Something I wasn't sure that we'd ever see in the headlines. The OPPD's, Omaha Public Power District's Fort Calhoun nuclear plant in Nebraska has successfully restarted after being idle since the first half of 2011. Exelon is operating the plant, which is capable of supplying electricity to more than 350,000 residential customers. You know, Exelon was brought in by OPPD to serve as a contractor to operate the plant because OPPD had pretty much totally lost the confidence of the NRC in being able to manage the nuclear plant. The types of problems that were being found included, heck, the plant when it was built, the calculations were, some of the calculations were wrong. The bioshield, concrete inside containment, was not built to the proper specs. I'm not sure what and all they were able to do to fix that, but apparently they have. Next, Seabrook, with a link to Seacoast Online. This is actually one of the front page stories that we'll be covering here in the front page review. Next Era develops options for concrete issue at Seabrook Station is the headline that NEI chooses. The headline on the front page of the local newspaper there in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, had quite a different twist on it. Next Era Energy and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission continue to work on a plan to manage concrete degradation caused by alkali silica reaction at the Seabrook Station nuclear power plant in New Hampshire. Next Era, which is seeking a license extension to 2050, is, quote, developing a comprehensive strategy supported by ASR experts, alkali silica reaction experts, from around the world for dealing with the issue both in the long and short term, said company spokesman Alan Griffith. Let's see, that was actually on the top of my stack here on the front pages. Let's go to the the Portsmouth Herald. Let's see here. Where is that story? Oh, they only have a little tiny highlight of the story down at the bottom there. You can see it in red on YouTube. And on the front page, they say nuclear plant woes. WOES. NRC says more info needed on concrete degradation at station. So that's, like I say, quite a different emphasis than the NEI puts on it, which is NextEra develops options for concrete issue. This is an article by Sheer Haberman. And the email is seacoastonline.com, so it is the same article, the exact same article that NEI is linking to. And again, the title, NRC, more info needed on concrete degradation at Seabrook Station. Here's how the article goes there in the Portsmouth Herald. Dateline, Seabrook, December 27th, 2013. One of the final hurdles to the extension of the Seabrook Station nuclear power plant's operating license until 2050 is the development of a comprehensive program to monitor and mitigate the degradation of concrete that is occurring in many of the plant's structures. Now, almost 5 years after the degradation was first discovered, it still appears that hurdle will not be an easy one to surmount. And they have a quote, based on this audit, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission staff found that additional information is needed before the state can determine that the applicant's operating experience supports the sufficiency of the license renewal application's aging management program, unquote. NRC inspectors wrote after a November review of the plan that the plant's owner, NextEra Energy Seabrook LLC, has proposed to manage the condition that is causing the deterioration of concrete structures. Quote, in addition, the staff identified a need for additional information regarding the management program description. The cause of this degradation has been identified as alkali silica reaction, or ASR. It is occurring at Seabrook Station because the groundwater that has been seeping into plant structures since construction ended in 1986 has caused some of the aggregates in the concrete used to build the plant structures to expand. That expansion is causing cracks to form in those structures. The cracking caused by ASR was first found by plant personnel in 2009, and while the request for a 20-year extension of the plant's operating license was submitted in May 2010, it wasn't until 2 years later that NextEra submitted its first proposal to deal with the issue. Since that time, the plant owner and the NRC have been trying to determine whether there is a plan that is adequate to protect public safety and what it should contain. Quote, and here's the quote that NEI used. We're developing a comprehensive strategy supported by ASR experts from around the world for dealing with the issue both in the long and short term, Griffith has said, adding that the problem, quote, will not affect our ability to operate the plant safely. However, there are difficult problems, unquote. However, there are difficult problems in developing such a strategy because while ASR has been found in concrete structures in various parts of the country, Seabrook Station is the only nuclear power plant currently suffering from that condition. The Union of Concerned Scientists pointed out that the lack of experience with ASR, particularly in safety-related nuclear power plant structures, makes developing a comprehensive plan for controlling it very difficult. Quote, since there's currently no generally accepted technology to mitigate the effects of ASR within an existing concrete structure, the best one can do is monitor and understand the evolution of the structural damage, unquote. According to a UCS report dated October 29th, 2013, quote, but it is important to recognize that at this point, the NRC and NextEra are still assessing the situation at Seabrook to understand the extent and potential consequences of the ASR problem. There have been no meaningful analyses to determine how fast the concrete will degrade or to develop a plan for repairing the concrete, the UCS report from October of 2013 states. As a result, several local nuclear safety groups have called on the NRC to either immediately deny NextEra's license extension request or to shut the plant down now. After 3 years of consultation, we have concluded that the extensive ASR in safety-related buildings and the active progression of ASR in the susceptible concrete of the remaining structures on site will preclude Seabrook from operating in the near future, wrote Sandra Gavutis of the Newburyport, Massachusetts-based C10, it's not C-10, the letter C-10, Research and Education Foundation in a press release issued December 17th. Bruce Scud, a co-founder of No More Fukushimas, which is also based in Newburyport, had an even harsher demand for the NRC. Fukushima is the name of the Japanese plant. Well, you know that. No More Fukushimas is a quote. It has two primary reasons for urging the NRC to shut down Seabrook, Scud wrote in a press release issued December 19th. Quote, first, the concrete degradation study funded by Seabrook's owner, NextEra, is flawed and cannot be used as a basis for determining the reliability of structures at Seabrook. And second, the NRC's claim that the plant can be safely operated in the short term is unfounded and cannot be substantiated. So that article is quite different from the way NEI characterizes it. In my humble opinion. Next, NRC says 9 Mile Point nuclear plant correctly addressed concerns. And they have a link to an AP story. Constellation Energy Nuclear Group successfully addressed problems that caused unscheduled shutdowns in 2012 at the 9 Mile Point nuclear plant in New York State, according to the NRC. The problems were of, quote, low to moderate safety significance, the NRC said. International. Toshiba in talks for majority stake in NewGen. They have links to Reuters and the UK Guardian and Wall Street Journal yesterday, all on this. Japan's Toshiba is in talks to buy Spanish utility Iberdrola's 50% stake in the UK nuclear energy consortium New Generation, NU Generation, and a portion of the 50% stake that France's GDF Suez owns. Quote, we want a majority to move forward, said Toshiba President Hisao Tanaka. Quote, so we would want to take some of GDF's share, but have them remain as an operator, unquote. Toshiba will be able to have subsidiary Westinghouse provide 3 of its AP1000 reactors if the deals are completed. So Toshiba eyeing the United Kingdom market. That strike price that the UK government granted to EDF apparently is quite attractive to Toshiba. Headline only, Pakistan nuclear project with China in accordance with IAEA standards. They have a link to a Press Trust of India story on that. Now, we didn't do NEI's email yesterday. Let's take a look at that. The top story, Vermont Yankee decommissioning deal could serve as a blueprint. A link to the Wall Street Journal. The agreement between Entergy and Vermont Governor Peter Schulin for the demolition of the Vermont Yankee nuclear plant could be a model for other nuclear plants, said Bill Mole, president of Entergy Wholesale Commodities. Entergy, of course, being the utility that owns Vermont Yankee. Nuclear plant operators have up to 60 years to decommission. It's perfectly fine for a company to go slow, and doing so can reduce safety concerns for workers, said John Hickman, project manager for nuclear decommissioning at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Vermont wants Vermont Yankee gone as soon as possible. This deal that Entergy made with the governor includes another $10 million in payments from Entergy for a project that the governor desires. All right, shakedown is what I call it. Next, San Onofre in the news. And we covered that yesterday and the day before. NRC issues notice on retired San Onofre nuclear plant. Here's how NRC highlights that San Diego Union Tribune story that came out on Christmas. The NRC has issued a violation notice saying Southern California Edison did not suitably assess the design of replacement steam generators at the retired San Onofre nuclear generating station in California. The NRC notice does not carry penalties or sanctions. Quote, we will evaluate the final determination letter from the NRC and respond within 30 days with appropriate corrective actions, said company spokeswoman Maureen Brown. Now, of course, the biggest aspect of the story is the utility has been quite adamant that the ratepayers should pay for the cost of the premature retirement of San Onofre's units 2 and 3. And the fact that NRC issued a violation saying, no, Southern California Edison, you did not suitably assess the design of these critical components that were installed on your behalf. I think if there ever was any doubt whether or not the utility would be able to recover the costs, I think this will seal the shareholders' fate. And the shareholders' fate is you pay, is my prediction. Not the ratepayers, but the shareholders. And the shareholders need to hold their officers accountable for installing these lemons on this huge investment, this source of many, many megawatts, millions of kilowatt hours of electricity, clean, safe, economical electricity. I saw a figure in my local paper quoted saying that after the San Onofre unit shut down, electricity prices raised more than 50%, like 59% or something like that, there in Southern California. Not to mention all the scrambling going on to try to avoid people flipping their switches and not having any juice coming through them in their residences and businesses. Next, attorneys general critique NRC study on used fuel storage from the White Plains, New York-based newspaper, the Journal News. That's a hometown paper for Indian Point. The NRC's study on the long-term storage of used nuclear fuel does not adequately consider the risks of on-site storage of used fuel at individual nuclear power plants, according to a document submitted by 4 state attorneys general, plus the general counsel for the Prairie Island Indian community in Minnesota. NRC spokesman Neil Sheehan is quoted as saying the NRC will give full consideration to all comments received. Finally, Hanford in the news, the Seattle Times, an opinion piece, new tanks urged as first step towards solving Hanford site's nuclear waste issue. Washington State should ask the U.S. Department of Energy to replace leaking tanks at the Hanford site as a temporary solution, writes Tom Carpenter, Executive Director of Hanford Challenge. The new tanks should be part of a process to, quote, generate more reserve storage space and prepare for eventual treatment of this waste into a glass matrix and disposal into a licensed deep geological repository. So there's an awful lot in that short sentence. Of course, we don't have a licensed deep geological repository. We don't have any way of moving high-level waste away from these defense facilities, Hanford and Yucca Mountain both. As far as generating more reserve storage space, well, what you want to do is have adequate space for the waste that's there, and you want that adequate storage space not to leak when that's part of being adequate, is not leaking. I'll tell you what, I'm all in favor of proceeding on the NRC review of the license application for Yucca Mountain that DOE submitted. Gosh, it hadn't been that long. Hadn't been that long ago. Where's my clip from Young Frankenstein when the housekeeper's name was mentioned and the horses would go hee? That's how I feel about former NRC chairman Gregory Jasko. Every time his name is mentioned. International. 2 stories, both out of Japan. Japanese companies struggle to win contracts without TEPCO. The link to the Asahi Shimbun newspaper. Japanese nuclear reactor manufacturers are having difficulty winning foreign contracts as primary partner Tokyo Electric Power focuses on decommissioning Fukushima Daiichi plant. A partnership structure for Japanese reactor exports would entail TEPCO providing service and operational expertise. Quote, despite advanced technology, reactor makers have failed to break into global markets. We need to export infrastructure packaged with maintenance and services, said Tadashi Maeda of the Japan Bank for International Cooperation. Yeah, it'd be kind of hard to sell a proposal talking about TEPCO's laudatory operational expertise. Kyoto story linked. Chugoku Electric seeks safety review of the Shimane, Shimane reactor in Japan. Chugoku Electric Power is seeking a safety assessment of its Shimane No. 2 reactor in western Japan. Reactors in the country need to pass the safety review before resuming operation. Inspirational quote of the day, success and failure, we think of them as opposites, but they're really not. They're companions, the hero and the sidekick. Good thing to keep in mind. All right, thanks, NEI. Other news in the front pages today, nuclear power, the news in the Japan Times, and actually this story here, let me see my camera. Fukushima decon deadline delayed until 2017. And I thought they had covered this earlier in the week. They also have 2 other stories here on the front page. That's a Kyoto story on the Fukushima deadline extension, or not deadline, but plan. Uh, they were originally targeting March, this coming March, 3 months from now, as being done with the area decontamination. Um, but instead of 3 months, they're getting an extra 3 years in their plan. Next, another Kyoto story. TEPCO's state-backed bailout fund warms to new restart-based rehab plan. Jeez. A state-backed bailout fund has agreed in principle on a new turnaround plan for TEPCO that features more financial support from the government as TEPCO gropes to contain the Fukushima No. 1 nuclear plant disaster. But the plan also assumes reactors will be restarted, and that's the Kashiwazaki Kariwa plant, which they hope to restart beginning in July. And the third nuclear-related insert, radiation halves, HALVES, near No. 1 plant. This is a GG News Service story. Near surface air radiation doses within 80 kilometers of the Fukushima No. 1 atomic plant have halved over the last 2 years, the Nuclear Regulation Authority reported. The radiation doses 1 meter above ground as of September 28th were 47% below the levels in November 2011 on average, the NRA said Wednesday. It calculated the doses based on data from its 7th aerial survey since the March 2011 meltdowns. The survey was carried out at an altitude of 300 meters above the ground. Oh, there was another story in the Japan Times. Thanks to my office manager, Carrie Holmes, for pointing this out to me today. And it's about the reprocessing plant that is continuing to be to push towards operability at the Rokkasho, city of Rokkasho. Dateline Aomori headline: Safety check of Rokkasho nuke facility sought. And it's a Kyoto story. Japan Nuclear Fuel Limited said Thursday it plans to have its troubled fuel reprocessing plant in the village of Rokkasho in Aomori Prefecture. Anyway, Japan Nuclear Fuel plans to have the plant undergo a state safety assessment on January 7th so that it can be brought online. The company hopes to receive permission to run the plant by next October before seeking local consent for actual operations. Nuclear Regulation Authority Chairman Tanaka has said he cannot tell how long the Rokkasho nuclear safety assessment will take. It will be the NRA's first inspection of a spent fuel reprocessing plant since new safety rules took effect on December 18th. And it describes some of the standards, and it ends up noting that Japan has a plutonium stockpile now of 44 tons, which is enough for 5,000 nuclear bombs. Moving away from the front pages once again, one of the things we do is look through Drudge, the articles that Drudge publishes or highlights links to. And one of the stories from the London Mail that Drudge highlighted had another link to it on a nuclear story. Austria to conduct search for secret Nazi nuclear weapon lab hidden underneath a concentration camp complex. This is today in the London Mail, an article by Alan Hall, and they highlight 3 facts out of the article. Readings at the site of the Gusen plant, Gusen, near St. Georgian, show elevated levels of uranium, which are indications of subterranean implosions 7 decades ago. There was also 15 miles of tunnels which lie under Gusen. That was a subcamp of Mauthausen, where tens of thousands of people were murdered. And finally, the hunt to find evidence of atomic research after a documentary by Andreas Sulzer unnerved local residents. And here's how the article starts. Austrian authorities have ordered a search of secret tunnels beneath a former concentration camp complex where Nazi scientists are believed to have conducted nuclear research in a bid to build an atomic bomb. The probe was triggered by a TV documentary which accessed wartime archives containing blueprints and eyewitness accounts of frantic attempts to beat the Americans in the race for the weapon to win the war. And recently, readings were taken of the area at St. Georgian showing elevated levels of uranium, indications of subterranean implosions 7 decades ago. Then they have some photographs. The caption of one, and readings taken at the site of the Gusen concentration camp near St. George in Austria. And here's a picture of the camp. They also have pictures of workers at the plant making munitions during World War II. Prison labor. Slave laborers, they call them. And they also were used to build the tunnels. It says that in 1944, 20,000 out of the 40,000 slave laborers involved in building the tunnels had been worked to death. Oh, mercy. Anyway, interesting story. Thank you, Drudge. And thanks, Carrie. Back to the front pages. Knoxville News Sentinel. Story about Oak Ridge. Y12 touts security upgrades. 2012 breach effects result in a slew of improvements. In the first sentence of the article uses the word embarrassing, and I sure agree. That was quite embarrassing. Oops, I appear to have lost my TalkShoe connection. Would you excuse me while I dial back in? I may not be able to get connected again.
Please enter your conference ID followed by the pound sign. Your entry is not valid, or your call is not scheduled at this time.
Oh, I'll have
9, 5, 3, 4, 8. Please enter your conference ID followed by the pound sign.
Well, I'll have to upload the audio there on TalkShoe extract it from this video recording. That's another nice thing about doing the video, is in these cases where the connection drops with TalkShoe, we can recover it. Let's see, there were several stories about Iran, like, a lot of end of the year stories, looking forward to the year ahead on politics. The Gettysburg Times out of Pennsylvania has a story which says, coming up around mid-year, we expect Obama to be seeking to secure a comprehensive nuclear deal with Iran before the 6-month deal struck in November expires. Of course, the clock is not ticking on those 6 months yet. A poll on the front pages of a couple of papers, including the Northern Virginia Daily. It's an AP poll, and you notice one of the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth top story as far as people thinking, did this story affect you in an important way, was the international agreement with Iran. Fully 41% said this story was very important to them personally. If you add the somewhat important, that goes all the way up to 76%. So the American people are paying attention to what is going on with Iran's nuclear weapons program. Pretty good. Washington Times reports that Obama will not make a personal visit to Iran, but he might have if preconditions hadn't gotten in the way. And then finally, out on the West Coast, a nuclear weapons related story. Puget Sound area, the Register Guard newspaper out of Oregon, Eugene, Oregon. And one of their top stories, Navy project worries activists. This is, they want to build an explosives handling wharf that is adjacent to where Trident missiles are handled on another wharf. So folks are saying, well, if there was an explosion at this new explosives handling wharf, it has the potential to spread the contamination from the nuclear warheads on the adjacent wharf. The story is by Kyung Song of the Seattle Times. That's today's news. Thanks for joining in. Hope you have a great day, a fantastic weekend. I look forward to seeing you again on Monday. This is Steve Schulin signing off for Nuclear.com Daily. And those of you in the nuclear biz, make it another safe one, my friends.